What do you get when a spaghetti company tries to make a hamburger? I don't know. Let's find out. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the show, and today we've got something fun. We're taking a look at a Moto Guzzi California touring right here. This thing is Moto Guzzi's attempt at making a Harley Davidson softail. The question is it worth your time, or should you just kind of leave it in the used bike section where you find these nowadays? Because these bikes, they're out of production, unfortunately, if you ask me. Now here's the way this review is going to work today. Since we're not doing a full day in the saddle, I'm going to shorten things down here for you, give you a nice digestible video that's going to go over the stuff that I love, the stuff I don't, what it's like to ride on the street, what it's like to ride on the highway, what it's like in the Twisties, and then I'm going to give you my final thumbs up or thumbs down. I'm gonna try to get this done in under 10 minutes, but you know how I like to talk. So let's dive on in with the specs on this beast. The 2014 California is powered by an air and oil-cooled 1380cc transverse V-twin, which is pretty standard fare for Moto Guzzi. It makes 96 horsepower and 89 foot-pounds of torque, and we'll get back to those numbers when we hit the road, but they come on a bit later than you might expect. Those specs only tell you half the story though. Pulling this 761-pound motorcycle off the side stand's actually not that difficult, thanks to a very low 29.1-inch seat height. When you put your feet up on the pegs, the way that the gas tank is shaped is interesting. It's low and flat with cutouts for your legs so that you don't feel like your knees are getting pushed out. Sometimes on a lot of classic-styled cruisers, this area kind of boxes your legs out for space. One thing that does bully your legs out is, unfortunately, the engine. Because it's out to the side like this, you do have the heads sticking out right where your shins are. Is it a huge deal? No, it's just worth pointing out. One thing that does properly annoy me though on this motorcycle, the way it's currently set up, is that if you go to lock, you're gonna hit your knee before you actually get the handlebar all the way over. That's easy enough to solve. All you gotta do is just twist the bars forward, but it's worth pointing out if you're a slightly taller rider. Now hold up, you can't go hitting the road on a fancy cruiser without having a nice pair of shades to match, and Flying Eyes has you covered with some of the most comfortable sunglasses out there. They've got tons of frame styles to choose from, their lenses are backed by a scratch warranty, and they even have RX ready options so you don't have to wear contacts while you ride anymore. Check out everything they've got to offer down below and use the code SPITE for 10% off your order.
Now the first thing you're going to notice when you pull away on the California here is that it doesn't make its power in the typical cruiser way. Yes, the motor has 89-ish foot-pounds of torque, but you know, it doesn't really feel like there's a lot happening until you get it north of 4,000 RPM, which is sort of the antithesis of how you ride a cruiser motorcycle. This engine delivers its power in a lot more sporty fashion, which frankly I prefer. Another thing that's pretty surprising is how well this motorcycle dips into corners. You'd think that because it's really raked out and it's got a long wheelbase that it might be slow, and relative to a naked bike it is, but as far as other cruisers are concerned, I have felt so much slower handling from bikes that are north of 700 pounds. And honestly, for this thing's weight, it handles a lot closer to a Rebel 1100 than it does something like a Harley Road King. Another genuine surprise on this motorcycle is how quickly and how well it stops. The Brembos on this bike do a great job of towing it down, and while you do feel 760 pounds worth of motorcycle being slowed down by those front calipers, they're doing great work, and you really don't have to pull that lever all that hard. It's a single finger lever all the way, and it's really, really nice to get on a motorcycle where the lever just feels this good. Meanwhile, out here on the highway, this motorcycle is slightly more confused. Don't get me wrong, it's still doing exactly what I wanted it to do, and that is to be comfortable and go down the road, but there are some problems with the way that this motorcycle is set up that I'm not falling in love with. So first of all, when you're out on the highway and you're cruising around, one of the things that you really like to do, especially if you're coming off of Harleys, is kick it up into the top gear and then just let a nice whack of torque guide you around whatever's in traffic in front of you. However, on this motorcycle, the torque out of 6th gear doesn't really hit you the way it's supposed to. And that's because it's more of an overdrive gear than anything. It's literally called a final overdrive. Dropping it down into 5th gear, you do have a little bit more power. However, like in the Twisties, you really do want to keep this motorcycle north of about 4,500 RPM for you to really feel what this thing wants to do. It's a weirdly sporty motor. Now, one feature that is nice on here, given that this is a 2014 motorcycle, is we do have cruise control. However, I really don't like the way that it's set up on this motorcycle. It irritates me to no end. So you have to press and hold the button, and all press and holds on this motorcycle are long. It's not like 1, 2, on. It's more like count to 5 and then it's on. Then once you press and hold it, you get that blinking light in the dash. Then you click it again all the way in, which can be difficult because this button is actually recessed, so you have to poke it, and then it's on. However, with this bike, there's no roll to kill. You can hit it again to disable the cruise control, assuming you get it all the way down, or you tap the brakes and pull in the clutch. I will give them a little bit of slack here, given that this motorcycle is going on 10 years old. However, it is nice to know that you actually have to turn it off yourself using different controls. You can't just roll the throttle forward. I suspect that's down to the fact that this actually has a cable throttle system. But how is it for comfort? Oh man, this thing is really nice. I really, really like it. The seat is nice and wide. It's comfortable. The seating position is easy to get along with. I'm very, very comfortable just chilling on this motorcycle. However, now that we're pulling up to a stop, it is worth pointing out that it is currently 103 degrees on my dashboard. This is an air and oil cooled motorcycle. Going slow in this kind of temperature is not what this bike likes. You really do want to keep it moving, otherwise it starts to smell a little bit like a volcano. Despite that fact, I would have no issues putting this thing on the highway and just going across the horizon, because this windscreen does a great job. Usually I hate them, but this one, I don't know where it's positioned, but it's doing exactly the right job. If every windscreen I put on a motorcycle was this good, I'd ride with them all the time as opposed to taking them off. This is a great windscreen, and I really appreciate it. But now that we've mentioned all of this stuff, let's pull this bike back over and get you my final thoughts on the California here.
Now, I've been mobbing around on the California here all day, and the best thing I can say about this is it keeps putting a smile on my face to twist the throttle on this bike. Sure, it's not delivering that down low hit that you might expect from a V-twin, especially one that's this big. However, when you get it up into the power band, that's really when this engine shines. Like I mentioned earlier, if you're one of those habitual engine luggers where you put your Harley in 6th gear and just rely on a ton of torque, this motor is not gonna do it for you. It's weirdly a sporting motor. However, if you keep it between 5,000 RPM and redline, it's actually a lot of fun. When you pair that with the surprisingly good handling on this bike, as well as the Brembos on here, you've got a package that's actually a lot better in a twisty road environment than a ton of Harley Davidsons that I've ridden. And let's get real, this bike costs only $10,400 used at AF1. That is a screaming deal for what you're getting here. You're getting a motorcycle with cruise control. Yes, it irritates me. You're getting a motorcycle that has 6 gears. Yes, the 6th is an overdrive, but it's still really great on the highway. And I know tastes are subjective, but this motorcycle just looks so cool. It's unmistakably Italian. It's got a very different aesthetic than your average cruiser out there. So if you're looking to add something to your stable that doesn't look like the classic Harley Davidson from the last few years, or an Indian from, you know, a century ago, this is a great option. It's a very unique ride. And while it's not nearly as potent as the competition, for 10,000 bucks, you can do a whole lot worse. If Moto Guzzi was going to be bringing back this motorcycle, there are a few things that I would recommend they do. First of all, you have to add roll to kill to your cruise control. This push button cruise control, this ain't it. However, they do actually have a proper cruise setup on their V100 Mandello, something that came basically directly off of the Aprilia Tuono. It works great, so a newer model won't have this issue. Another thing that's just a little bit wonky to me is the transmission on this motorcycle. When you're dealing with cruisers, Harley Davidson really has sort of set the standard with a clunky, feedbacky transmission. I don't want it to feel like I'm shifting a freaking tractor or anything, but I do want a little bit more positive feedback. I find myself missing shifts on this motorcycle, and that can be a little bit of a bummer. Lastly, I would like a little bit more down low torque and maybe a little bit more horsepower, but honestly, if you didn't change the motor on this, I think it still fits really well within the category just because of how much fun it is to rev this thing out. It's a little bit unique to ride a cruiser in the top end of the power band as opposed to down low, but I find it a lot of fun. Now, with all that being said, it's time to give you a thumbs up or a thumbs down, and I think it's obvious here at this point. I really recommend the California. This is a great cruiser. It's a shame you can't get them new anymore, but for 10,000 bucks, please, somebody go buy this motorcycle. Link is down in the description for the actual bike I'm sitting on here at AF1. If you're interested in checking it out. A big shout out to our sponsor for today's video, Flying Eyes, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. See you later.